find this. This is in the budget book, starting at page 537. And again, you do have a printout of all the information, the at a glance, the questionnaire, as well as the budget modification request. So Director Potter, you are now recognized. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to address you again. The first thing I want to point out is Metro Water Services has been in business since 1833, and we are very proud of that. And we are lucky and delighted to be able to continue that legacy of service that was established in 1833. Our fundamental goals over the course of the year is to maintain regulatory compliance. We are subject to the rules associated with the Clean Water Act and the Safe Drinking Water Act. I am what's called the responsible public official and am criminally held liable for our activities associated with what we do. So we're going to do it right, and I'm not going to go to jail. So we're going to meet, Metro Water Services is going to meet our 2025 operating budget. I'm going to talk about the budget proposal I have before you tonight. It's important to note that a lot of our budget is really out of our control when it comes to water treatment, wastewater treatment, response to repairs, electrical demand, chemical expense, things like that. The only line item that's really specifically under our control is labor. And I'll kind of preempt the question that was been asked earlier. If we were to have to reduce our budget, it would come in the form of reduced staffing. And unfortunately, if we were in a position where we had to reduce staffing, a lot of that expense would be resurfaced in the form of overtime, especially in the operating divisions, because we have to treat the water, we have to respond to emergencies, we have to make repair. Labor and benefits account for 39% of our budget, and the commodities, water, natural gas, chemicals, things like that, account for 17%. And then LOCAP, pilot, fleet, and ITS accounts for 18%. So we don't really have much flexibility in our budget request with the exception of labor. For our budget request for water for 2026, we had a 5.9 million requested increase in commodities, electricity, chemicals, and repair. And then we had an additional 8 million in associated with the pay plan, internal service fees, LOCAP, and insurance. So the total operating budget increase for those two is 13.9 million. And then we had debt service, the operating fund reserve, and ENR adjustment was 5 million. So it's an increase of 19.3 million compared to last year's budget. On the stormwater side, the budget is relatively simple. We don't really have any operating increases requested. The staffing is going to remain the same. We do have an adjustment of 230,000 for ENR fund, which is our capital fund that is funded through stormwater fees. And then 831,000 for the pay plan, internal service fees, LOCAP, and insurance. So the total change for stormwater is 1.6 million. I'm sorry, 1.06 million. So let's talk about what we do with the money that's entrusted to us. It's kind of interesting to do a recap of what we do on a 24-hour period. And I want to talk about how our system has increased in size from demand and from customer base. So for the next 24 hours, we're going to treat and deliver 109 million gallons of drinking water. And one thing I want to point out that for every gallon of drinking water that we deliver to a home, it costs our customers 0.006 cents. So 100 gallons of water is 60 cents. A gallon of wastewater treatment is 0.009 cents. So it's 90 cents for 100 gallons of treatment. As I mentioned earlier, we do have an increase in our number of customers. Compared to last year, it's 1.3. I'm going to give you some data later that talks about the increase over the last 10 years. We're going to collect and reclaim 156 million gallons of wastewater. So one of the things I want to point out is we are very careful now to use the word reclaim. We don't operate sewage plants. We operate water reclamation facilities because sewage is sent to us and then we reclaim the water from it and we reintroduce it into the environment. There's an increase of 2% for our customers on the sewer side. We're going to produce 100 tons of biosolids. So that's probably the least glamorous, but most risky thing that we do as a city from Metro Water Services perspective. Because if we didn't produce the 100 tons of biosolids a day, we would be sending 35 tractor-trailer loads of sludge through our community and landfilling it. We recently opened the Headworks facility on 3rd Avenue, and each month, that facility removes 16,000 pounds of debris. So it's kind of hard to get your hands around that, but it's 8 tons of debris that used to go through the central plant and clog our flights and chains, our pumps, and dramatically increase our operating expenses because we had to repair that. We operate and maintain over 6,000 miles of water and sewer pipe. We have over 3,000 miles of sewer pipe, 3,000 miles of water pipe. We have 54 water pump stations and 117 wastewater pump stations. Most of those pump stations have electrical redundancy, and all of them that don't have on-site electrical redundancy have the ability to be reconnected within 4 hours. Both of our water plants can go completely off the grid. We have a relationship with TVA, a contractual relationship that requires us on demand to get off the grid in 5 minutes, and that gives us a really good rate adjustment on our electrical costs from TVA and NES. But that's also a really good resilience message, because if we have bad weather coming in or things of that nature, we can jump off the grid and go on our generators at both our water plants. Today, we're going to read and bill 11,000 customers for service. We're going to complete 500 work orders. We're going to operate and maintain the 4th largest stormwater system in America. We're going to educate through our communications department our customers and our stakeholders. We're going to operate the district energy system, and we're going to generate up to 5 megawatts of solar power. That's an increase of 18% compared to last year. We have quantifiable reductions in electrical expense associated with our solar panels. We're really proud of it, and we think that's going to be a big function for us in the future. Let's talk about our customer base. If you look at 2011 compared to 2025, we've had an increase in our number of water customers of 27%. So we've increased our customer base by 1/4 in 10 years, in 14 years. On the customer side, on sewer, we've increased by 37%. So that's an average of 2.6 per year on the sewer side and 1.9% per year on the water side. Let's talk about our financial position. You may recall, I think in the last council, y'all set goals for us on the financial side. I'll go through the 5 of them. The first was the E&R fund. We wanted to have a target of greater than 500 days, and we have 783 at this point. Our debt service coverage ratios need to be, for senior debt, greater than or equal to 2.0. Right now, it's 2.8. Our debt to net plan assets has to be less than 55%, and it's at 36. Our capital cash financing needs to be at least 30% of our annual capital improvement plan. Right now, it's 49%, and we have maintained our credit ratings. So last month, I guess earlier this month, we had a ratings call with S&P, Moody's, and Kroll. It went really well. Obviously, I can't predict what their committees are going to say, but I think our bond ratings are going to remain stable. Our revenue is strong. We have over a 99.8% revenue capture rate. That was a very noteworthy item in the ratings calls. They thought that was significant. And from a financial perspective, I've been here 25 years, and we've never been in a better financial position or operational position than we've been in since I've been here. So, Madam Chair, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so very much, Director Potter. I'm going to start with the chair of our Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, Councilmember Parker. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Director Potter and the team for being here today. I wonder, I was kind of reviewing the budget that you've got before us today, and there's not a lot of changes year to year there. You covered the ones that are changing. But I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the capital side for both water and stormwater. I think I was reviewing the stormwater capital plan that is on the website right now, which is, was probably great to have at the time, but it feels a little bit dated at this point. And I know that y'all are working on that stormwater master plan. I've sat in on some of those meetings with the group, and it's very exciting. It's going to be very impressive, but I wonder if you could give us just a brief rundown of how the capital side works for both water and stormwater, and then let us know where we're at with the stormwater master plan and what we can expect to see there. Thank you.
So I'll start with stormwater. The stormwater master plan is an epic undertaking. If you think about what we're doing, we're taking an entire county and a stormwater system that's never been inventoried, and we're doing the whole thing. So I think we finished 19% of the county at this point. We started in the downtown and are working our way out. As we get more and more data, we'll be able to better forecast what the projected expenses are going to be. I'm really not comfortable talking about what I think is going to happen because I don't know. I can speak generally and say it's going to be significant because if you think about the fourth largest stormwater system in America and how we are blessed with water and blessed with rain, it's going to be a big price tag if we were intending to quickly address every stormwater demand we have in the county. Like other master plans we have on the water and sewer side, we would prioritize the projects and we would set a goal for how quickly we'd want to accomplish that capital plan. We haven't had a rate increase on the stormwater side in a very long time. Our revenue is flat because there's really no way to increase stormwater revenue without increasing the rate. So there's going to be a collision between what the stormwater master plan predicts and how much capital available we have. That's going to be a topic of discussion that we'll bring forth to this body at some point. It's really important to note that if you go back to 2002, when stormwater came to Metro Water Services, and you compare today to when it came over, we don't have nearly the chronic stormwater problems that we had. We still have them, but they're not as extreme. What we haven't been able to do that we really need to do is start addressing stormwater problems at the neighborhood level. We've gotten really good at solving problems on a street, maybe for 25 or 30 customers. But if you think about terms of the Nations or East Nashville or Bellevue, when you start talking about that scope of stormwater work, that's when you get some pretty serious numbers going. But that's really what we should be doing. When we do, like we're doing the project in East Nashville, the water project, we really should as a department and as a utility, when we tear into a neighborhood, we should do everything. And we should have the funding to do it. But currently, we don't have that for stormwater. And at some point, we'll need to make a decision if we want to. It's, Tom Palco, Ricky Swift, and his staff, they do great work with what they have. But we're just going to have a discussion at some point as to how much are we willing to invest in the city in the stormwater infrastructure. Because one thing that's really important to note, stormwater infrastructure is a utility in itself. We always speak about water, being a utility, wastewater being a utility, but stormwater is a utility that stands alone. And it needs to be invested similar to how we invest in water and wastewater. Before I go on to water, is that sufficient?
On the stormwater side, thank you for that explanation of where we're at. The document, there may be other documents that are guiding capital work right now, but the one I found started maybe 2015 with a work plan through fiscal year 25, and fiscal year 25 is about to end. So I guess, do we have a plan for what's going to guide the work in the interim between that document expiring, for lack of a better word, and while we finish the stormwater master plan? Is there like an interim?
We always have a capital plan in place for all three of the utilities. The stormwater master plan that we're doing presently is going to inform that stormwater capital plan. But we have a 1-year capital plan and we have a 5-year capital plan. And quite frankly, we could take what we know from a demand perspective and build out a more extensive capital plan. But it doesn't really make sense at this point to go beyond 5 years because we need to wait to see what the overall master plan looks like. We're also going to be changing the philosophy. Like I said earlier, we're going to be looking more globally at neighborhoods and regions in addition to the street level stormwater work we need to do. We've had great success in the home buyout program. In my opinion, we need to have a line item that funds that because there's no better way to solve a chronic, unsafe stormwater issue that involves the risk of loss of life or property than to eliminate the risk. And we've proven that we can do that. And the spectacular byproduct of that is this green space. And a lot of neighborhoods, it's always easy to talk about Wimpole Drive. Wimpole Drive, chronic, horrible flooding for decades. Well, now there's maybe 1 or 2 homes left for us to get, but it's really nice green space. And it's been returned to the community, and it acts as a buffer. It's just beautiful. So that needs to be incorporated. The stormwater discussion needs to be extensive, and we're ready to discuss it when y'all are ready to hear it, because I think it's something we need to address. We do recognize that there's a lot of demands on people's money, a lot of demands on revenue, but we need to have the discussion to identify how we can best move forward. On the water side, same thing. We have a water master plan. We have a wastewater master plan. We have the 1-year capital plan that we execute. We have a 5-year plan that we adjust every year. So we have a adjustable 5-year capital plan, and we have a 20-year master plan that projects demand on services out to 20 years. The bad news is 20 years ago, nobody saw this coming, right? And the best news is 50 years ago, 100 years ago, the designers of our system had a lot of foresight to build a really robust core distribution and collection system. But on the other hand, they built a combined system because they had no other option. We're having to undo some things that were done in the 1880s. Our water infrastructure age is, pretty old. So we should be replacing 1% water infrastructure a year. That's $90 million. We're currently not doing that because we can't support that in our capital plan. I say this, and I'm not trying to be a smart aleck about it, but in the water and the wastewater business and the stormwater business, we can spend money completely responsibly as fast as you give it to us. So it's always a question of balance. How much can we reasonably expect our ratepayers to support? I will point out that our rate structure, we're well below average statewide and nationally when you compare us to our peers. Our rates are well below average. In my opinion, we should look at that and get us more in line with our peers. Unfortunately, that would result in pretty serious rate increases because we're well below the national average. On the other hand, for our lowest use customers, our rates are relatively low in compared to our peers, which they should be. So we've got a really good rate structure that y'all passed 5 years ago. It's worked. It's increased revenue dramatically, but it's always worth a continuous relook. Perfect example, at Alejandro, we have a plant. The pump station was built in 1888. The basins were built in 1921. The filter building was built in 1929. It's half the water supply for this city. In 2018, we began a study about what are we going to do about that. So in the last 12 months, we started the program at Alejandro to build us a new plant. It's going to take 12 years. At K.R. Harrington, you may recall from last year's presentation, we finished a filter project and increased capacity there from 90 million gallons a day to 112. So we are ahead of the problem because if we were starting now, we'd be well behind the curve. But all that takes capital and it takes revenue. And it's a difficult conversation, but it's one we're gonna have to have.
Thank you, sir. And I'm almost done here, Chair. I do want to just take a moment to brag on the progressive rate structure. For those who don't know, if you really minimize your water use as a residential customer in Nashville, your bill will be like $20 a month. It's really fantastic the way we've structured that.
1873.
Thank you, sir. And you mentioned the Alejandro plant and the work that is beginning there. Are there any opportunities remaining for members of the public to tour that facility before the work begins in earnest? No. Oh, that's a shame.
Alejandro is a extensive construction site, but we do tours at KR Harrington. You can get the feel.
Harrington is amazing, very cool. It just doesn't have the aesthetic.
It just
punch
screams
of
1976 at you.
Yeah. So I don't know, folks, go online and look at pics of the Alejandro plant if you would. And that's all I've got right now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Chair Parker. And Director Potter, thank you for that presentation. I did have one question. You talked about the buyout program for homes that have been flooded. Currently, that program is federally funded. Is that correct?
No, ma'am. That well is dry.
When did that happen?
About in the last 4 years, it's slowly kind of died. Our last partnership with the Corps of Engineers finished about a year ago, and it doesn't look like it's going to be resurrected because that's FEMA money, and FEMA is not being overly funded, it seems.
Okay.
So that program, we don't need to rely on that anymore.
That's very helpful. Thank you. I literally just asked somebody about that 2 weeks ago, and I was told that it was federally funded. So thank you for giving me that information. And Councilmember Johnston, I have you in the queue. I have Councilmember Webb, Councilmember Allen, Councilmember Gamble, and then Councilmember Bradford. Was there anyone else that wanted to be in the queue? All right, Councilmember Johnston, you're recognized.
Thank you. Director Potter, I agree with everything that you have said, and I personally am ready to have that conversation about stormwater fees. I think Metro has a really bad habit of procrastinating, especially as it relates to infrastructure. And then all of a sudden we're in a horrible situation where we have to drastically increase fees or drastically increase property taxes. And I think we know what our need is, and we're learning even more about our need, especially for stormwater, but especially when we are talking about all these studies about increasing density and, updating Nashville Next or whatever. All that is much more stress on our very aging infrastructure. And so it's not just about the affordable housing aspect of it. It's about what is that going to cost the city to be able to support that? And it's quite expensive. So when you're ready, I hope that everyone else is ready. I will say that since 2021, when my district was very heavily affected by the flooding, I don't know that we've been looking at it necessarily. I know Tom is doing a great job. To your point of looking at neighborhoods as a whole, we've been doing a lot of piecemeal type stuff throughout District 26 and the surrounding districts. I will say it has rained like Noah is building another ark this year. And the work that you guys have done has made a tremendous, tremendous impact. Nobody has been affected in my district throughout any of those things. And it was, yes, right, exactly, knock on wood for sure. But so my point is that maintaining that and improving that infrastructure, whether it's natural infrastructure or man-made, makes a huge difference. And you're talking about massive property casualties. In the home buyout as well, we've had a ton of that in District 26, very excited about that, and it has been a huge benefit. Boring question. What could we do, or what could water do to increase our bond rating? I know our revenue is good. What could we do to get those ratings up?
Well, I mean, quite frankly, our ratings are really good.
They are.
And I'm not a bond expert, but my understanding is that as a subordinate to the metropolitan government, our bond ratings can't be higher than the metropolitan government.
That's probably fair. So is it equal? Is your bond rating equal to Metro's in general?
I think we're one level below.
Gotcha. So maybe Janine could, I'm sorry, Director.
Director Reed, you are recognized.
Hello, Janine Reed, Director of Finance. We actually just did rating calls last week. Those actually should come out on the 15th for all 3 rating agencies that we did. So our hope is that we will see an increase. I can't guarantee it, but I thought the ratings call went really, really well. We got great positive feedback from our bond counsel and, our underwriting. So the hope is those really went well.
Just for those that are listening at home, the reason that is important is because the higher the bond rating, the cheaper it is for us to borrow money. And so it does benefit the taxpayer. So it's important for us to be focused on that. But other than that, thank you. But I'm ready. We can start talking about that tomorrow.
You can call for a vote now.
Well, I would if we had all the information. So let's see if we can set that up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnston. Councilmember Webb, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I just want to say thank you to John Honeysucker. I call this man all the time. I don't care, 6 p.m., 1 a.m., and that man always answers. And, people want answers when they call. So I just want to say thank you. I hope I'm never a bother, but thank you. My first question is, on the unfilled FTEs, is that in your budget?
Yes.
Okay, that is in your budget.
We're having continued difficulty in filling the trades. We're seeing a increase in, as an example, electricians. And from my perspective, an electrician is a bellwether of the economy, because if we start hiring a lot of electricians, that means the private sector work isn't as strong as it was. So we're having better success, but it's hard to hire a mechanic, hard to hire an electrician, an electronics tech. So we do have a lot of vacancies, but we need to keep them because someday we need to get to 100% strength. We're building very complicated and complex buildings and machinery that requires a lot of expertise and a lot of wisdom. So it takes a long time to train wisdom. So we work diligently to hire people to the point where we have an apprentice program now where someone can just come off the street not knowing when a light bulb is, and we can take them down the path of becoming an electrician, becoming a mechanic. We assess their skill levels and we kind of put them in an apprentice program. So it's a great way to join Metro Water Services. And it's a great way to learn a trade if you can join us as an apprentice.
Trade skills definitely do not get the knowledge that they should get, that's for sure. Second question is, how do y'all decide what residential places get the capital improvements every year?
We have, like I said, the water and sewer master plans. We have a 1-year, 5-year, and 20-year. Most of it is driven by infrastructure age and infrastructure demand. Good example is we've seen a tremendous increase in demand to the southeastern quadrant of the county. Historically, we didn't see that. So all that development has driven transmission demand and collection demand to the southeast quadrant. Jolton, as an example, hasn't seen the development. So it hasn't seen the transmission. And in your case specifically, if we were to build a lot of transmission to that region of the county, it would decrease water quality because you don't want to have big pipes full of old water. So the master planning process drives those decisions. And it's a very disciplined approach. And there's no guessing involved. It involves a cold-blooded look at the best way to invest our money. You're welcome.
Councilmember Webb, was that sufficient, or did you have any other questions? Okay, thank you. Next, we have Councilmember Allen. You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for our clean water and all you do. We appreciate it. I just have to ask, will any of that lovely historic stuff at Omohundro be preserved?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
So just kind of walking around the pump house that was built in 1888. It'll be decommissioned. One of my goals is to be the person who turns it off. It needs to be done with respect because it served this city for 130 years.
Yeah.
We're going to maintain that as a museum, and we're going to hopefully get really creative and put some administrative space in it. The boiler house will remain untouched. It's been overhauled and it's serving its purpose. The filter building, the really pretty building that looks like the Roman aqueduct, it's going to be repurposed. So essentially it'll be gutted, and then instead of having filters in it, we'll have what's called granular activated carbon contact chambers. And so we're going to build a new pump station, both low service and high service, and we'll build a new treatment facility that will put all of the basins under a roof, and it will increase capacity, and it will replace all of the pumps that have been in use since the 50s. One of the things to recognize about Omohundro, when it was built, 1888, it was powered by steam. So the first upgrade it was done was to DC power in the 1920s. We have a switchboard that was signed by, we think, Mr. Westinghouse himself came down. Then we transitioned to AC motors. That was done in the 50s. So we don't have any upgrades left. We've got to build a new plant.
Yeah.
One of the things that's interesting is all the pipe that's in Omohundro, we don't have anything to prove this, but if you're an engineer back in 1888, we think they built a foundry on site and built their own pipe. We have no idea the condition of the insides of those pipe because there's no way to look. The historic nature of the new buildings will match what you see. So when you look across the river from Shelby Park, it's going to look like it was all built at the same time. One of the things that we're doing is our goal and our intention, and we're going to do this, is going to be the most sustainable plant in the world when we're done.
That's great.
As an example, we'll have enough solar at OMO to run the whole facility on solar. We had to cut down some trees. What we did was we harvested that wood and we milled it, and we're kiln drying all of that wood, and we're going to use it in the new construction. We're eliminating like 98% of the waste streams off the property. And the only thing that's really leaving the property is rocks. It's going to the airport for them to use as fill. So historically, it's going to be accurate, and it's going to be respectful.
That's great. I appreciate the attention that's paid to all that. 'Cause it's just such an amazing facility. And then one technical question. In the community confidence report that came out, you had a great section in there explaining PFAS, which is this new thing that we're all nervous about. And my understanding is that there is this activated carbon.
Okay.
So are we going to be doing that? And does that add extra costs that we were hoping we weren't going to have to do?
We built, in 2018, we built what's called a pilot plant. So essentially, we built a scale model of our treatment facility. And then we tested a variety of treatment processes in various combinations for 18 months. So the reason we did that is to test every conceivable combination in every season of the year. So we would get all of the water quality input, and then we tested it against all the various treatment processes available to us. We analyzed that data for 18 months. It resulted in the granular activated carbon contact chambers being the best option, but we're also in the design, including the ability to put ozone post-treatment on the end of it. So the granular activated carbon, the reason it works so well is if you go back to chemistry, the carbon molecule, all those little things sticking out of the carbon molecule, there's lots of sites for the carbon to use the word absorb the impurities. So pharmaceuticals, endocrine disruptors, all that really horrible stuff, PFAS, we'll be able to even better improve the water quality that we already have. So when we're done, the GAC filters will be in the current filter building. We'll will have the ability to add post-ozone, which is an extraordinarily powerful oxidizer, to really hammer it if we need to. So we're convinced, I am sure about this, and I don't really use that phrase very often. We are sure, based on data and analysis, where we picked the right process. And we even went beyond that to add another step, if necessary, to make it even better. One of the problems, and I'll put in quotation marks, is our EPA certified laboratory can detect the presence of impurities to 10 to the minus 12. So that's 12 zeros behind the decimal point. So that's good that we can detect it, but now that we detected it, what do? Right? Well, we get our water from a river, right? And step one is the raindrop hits the ground and it's going to absorb some impurities. And we also have wastewater facilities upstream, and that's going to introduce waste streams into the river as well. We don't have extensive industrial influence on our watershed, and we don't have extensive cattle operations on our watershed. So our water source is both abundant and it's certified exceptional quality. So Nashville is perfectly positioned from a water, sewer, and stormwater perspective based on our resources available to us.
Great. Thank you for that very detailed explanation.
Thank you so very much. Councilmember Gamble, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you. I had no idea what you were talking about with all the engineering lingo, but I appreciate the
Me and
very
Berkeley
detailed.
we can go all night.
I want to move to wastewater, if you will. I, first of all, want to thank and commend the wastewater department. You all have done a great job getting the department going and addressing waste management issues that we had in the city. I haven't heard nearly the complaints that we were hearing 2 or 3 years ago in regards to trash pickup and everything. So thank you for all that you're doing. Sharon Smith, Tracy Thurman, Director Thurman, thank you. My question has to do with FTEs for waste management. I noticed in your request, there's a request for $359,600 for recruitment of leadership positions, human resource manager, several other.
Councilor, may I interrupt real quick?
Yes, please.
Director Thurman is going to give a presentation.
Oh, okay.
When I'm done.
Awesome, awesome. So I'll wait for that.
Yeah.
Then. Okay.
She's
Thank you.
all teed up.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Bradford, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair. First, I want to start with anecdotes. Recently, I had an opportunity to have a conversation with the Icelandic ambassador to the United States, and she was bragging about how clean and how great their water is. And I said, you obviously haven't had our water. And not to say that in front of Director Potter, because we are very proud here in Nashville of how clean our water is. So some questions I've got is, for starters, I wasn't planning on asking you about targeted savings because when I was looking at your sheets, I didn't see that y'all had any targeted savings from last year. And so I appreciate you being proactive and, trying to answer that, but I didn't see where that question was going to have to be asked. But what I do want to ask about is, first of all, with sewer, one of the issues I've started seeing, especially in my area, is because there's a lack of sewer infrastructure, a lot of development they're not wanting to do residential because of the cost of putting in the amount of sewer infrastructure. And so we're seeing large plots of land wanting to go industrial or commercial, when what we really need in our city is more housing. So is there a master plan for sewer, or what can we do to ensure that Metro is being more proactive in going out in areas, specifically the Couchville Pike area, which we've had several conversations in the past, of going out there and figuring out what is needed and how Metro can help kind of prepare the area so that we can start seeing more development happening for us, especially housing.
This will be kind of a history lesson in the beginning. So the last time the county government extensively extended sewer was when the first Mayor Briley was in office. So since then, the department has relied on development to drive the construction of sewer. So for us to make that transition to get in the business of extending sewers at our expense, that would be an additional capital expense that we're not budgeted to absorb. And that would need to be something we build into the rates, and we'd have to get ahead of that. That's purely a policy decision. We can do that, but we need to have the funding to do it. And that's just a policy discussion.
And I personally think there probably is an appetite in this body, especially as we're talking about affordable housing, and we're all seeing some of these issues, that's an added cost to the developer that they are passing on to the people buying the housing. And so I really think we do need to start having that conversation about how can we get y'all to a point where we can be more proactive and not reactive. The other question, getting back to like the filtration, there's 5.9 million for chemicals and other things, electricity, repairs, et cetera. How much of that 5.9 is chemicals?
Let's see here. I think it's 600,000.
Okay.
Let me confirm that.
And the reason I ask is,
I'm sorry, 2.4 million.
Okay. And the reason I ask, and you kind of touched on it with Councilmember Allen's questions, but are we ever going to get to a point where we're not using chemicals to treat our water, where we're going to use all carbon or UV or ozone?
Okay, on the wastewater side, we're chemical free.
Okay.
The only thing we use is compressed air. And we use a lot of it because that's how we do it. And we use ultraviolet light for disinfection. And that was a goal that we set 15 years ago, was to get rid of chlorine gas at all of our facilities. And we've done that, by the way. On the water side, it's impossible to go chemical free because, as an example, you need a coagulant to have the dirt particles to join together. You need to have powdered activated carbon. If we did not use that chemical, your phone would light up because it would taste terrible. Our water has a lot of sediment in it, when it comes out of the river, and we remove most of it. But there's things called MIB and geosmin that essentially are algae, and once any kind of microscopic amounts that get through, they're very detectable to the degree of 5 parts per billion. You can detect it with your nose. So we're never going to be chemical free. But we also don't have chlorine gas at the water plants. We use sodium hypochlorite. So on site, we take restaurant quality salt and we put a very large number of amperage across it and disassociate the sodium and the chlorine. We make our own Clorox, essentially, is what we do. And then we use the Clorox, sodium hypochlorite, to disinfect it. So it's just not feasible to go chemical free at a water plant, and you really don't want that anyway, because you got to have a disinfectant, number one. You got to have a coagulant, and you got to treat for taste and odor.
I appreciate that clarification. In conversations about the FTEs and staffing, I know I've had conversations with other departments in the past. One thing I've always been curious about these last few years is, we've got issues with unhoused populations, and a lot of them, if we could find a way as metro departments to partner to try and find jobs to get them off the streets. So my question is, does Metro Water do any outreach to try and, for this apprenticeship program, kind of help get some of these folks, retool them for jobs within Metro Water so that they have that skill that they can go out and...
We would welcome them to apply.
Okay.
I mean, we do a lot of outreach. We visit high schools, college fairs. We do as much as we think is reasonable. Our challenge is similar to the sheriff's. The 20 to 26-year-old, we have a hard time communicating with because they don't see the opportunity that we're placing before them. Our sweet spot is that 28-year-old and older that has been around the block a few times, that kind of sees the opportunity before them. It would be great for us to have the opportunity to call somebody and offer them a job, right, like off the bat. That'd be good. And we could put people to work quickly in a well-paying job. It's just a difficult thing. The labor market is 2.4% unemployment in Nashville. There's a lot of opportunities for other types of work, and quite frankly, what we do for a living is hard. When you go to work for us and you're working a crew, you're working, and sometimes it's 10 degrees and it's raining, or I guess it's snowing, but sometimes that makes people make different decisions. But anything we can do to hire people quickly, we're in.
So what I'm hearing is that if like Director Calvin from OHS was to reach out to you, is there a way that Metro Water and OHS can partner to try and help find jobs for
Yes.
those of these individuals? You'd be willing to assist?
Absolutely.
Awesome. And also sounds like maybe a conversation should be had between yourself and Sheriff Hall. Like, how can you replicate what he's doing as far as like the part-time work, et cetera? Last question. I'm always fascinated by this. We're going to talk crap for a little bit. How much money have we generated through the Music City Gold for this
I
year?
have no idea.
Is there a way you can get that information? Because I'm always fascinated.
I have that number in a spreadsheet on my desk. I just don't have the number in my head.
And would you be able to send the information to about how much we've saved
Absolutely, we have
by
that too.
doing that instead of shipping it off?
Yeah.
'Cause I've always been fascinated.
I'll
about
send you
that.
the spreadsheet in the morning.
I appreciate that.
I just don't have that memorized.
All right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so very much. We have one final brief question by Councilmember Johnston. Councilmember Johnston, you're recognized.
It is brief. Thank you. Councilmember Bradford triggered my memory when we're talking about new development and the cost of infrastructure and participation agreements. And I was just made aware of a participation agreement. It used to be my district, it's now Councilmember Welch's, but we were under the assumption it was mine, so I know more than I probably should. But that process took an inordinate amount of time because on the original communication from the water department was, you can do this or this. And so the person bought the property. 2 years later, we're just now going to see that participation agreement on the agenda next week. So I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus. I'm just wondering if there's a better way, because I think, to his point, we're going to be seeing more and more of this as people want to build more housing when we don't have the infrastructure in place. Is there a way to improve that process to make it more palatable for the developers to not take 2 years?
I'm going to be a little defensive.
I'm not attacking.
I hear you. Developers have attorneys, and their attorneys are instructed to save them money. So there's a great deal of negotiation that goes back and forth because we are literally not supposed to spend taxpayer money to benefit a development, right? Ratepayer money. So what we try to do is thread that needle, and we work really hard to balance it such that we can support development without crossing that line. But that always takes a lot of time because whenever you have two parties in a negotiation, it just takes time.
And maybe this was just a one-off because I understand what you're saying. That's not necessarily what happened here. And but it just, things went awry. And I thought, anytime we see a situation, it could be a one-off, but if there's a way to improve that process for both sides, because I know that we don't need to have our Metro employees bogged down for years trying to go back and forth with things either. So just let's take a look at it and just see if we can make it make a process improvement. But thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so very much for that. And I'm hearing that we have a waste services presentation. Okay.
Yeah.
A very, very brief presentation, please.
Madam Chair, I was really remiss. I didn't introduce my colleagues. Can I do that?
Very briefly, please.
Well, Tony, John, Mary, and Tara. Yes.
Thank y'all so much. And thank you all so much. And we do try to allot enough time for every department because y'all can go ahead and transition on up, please. We do try to allot enough time for every department because this work is so, so important. So we thank you so much for everything that y'all are doing. We also try to honor that we have staff and employees that have been here all day and it's 7:30 almost. So thank y'all so much. And we will very briefly go through this presentation. And colleagues, we're going to limit questions on this presentation to no more than 2 questions per colleague. Thank you. And if you could just introduce yourself when you're ready to start. Thank you.
I'm Tracy Thurman, and I'm the Director of Waste Services. And I want to thank you all for the opportunity to come before you today and present the first budget to establish the Department of Waste Services. And I'd like to thank the Budget Chair, Councilmember Porterfield, members of the council, the administration, Director Scott Potter, and the Metro Water Services team, and the Waste Services team. This is a significant moment, and I want to thank Mayor Freddie O'Connell and this council for your leadership in recognizing the importance of waste services as an essential service, one that every business and resident expects, a partner in enhancing public health and safety, as well as economic development, while contributing to the overall quality of life in Nashville and Davidson County. So Waste Services has been through a period of transition within Nashville, with 83% of services formerly delivered by a contract service provider, a company that went bankrupt and left the city struggling to provide collection services. The city ramped up to provide services under the leadership of Metro Water Director Scott Potter and Assistant Director John Honeysucker and Manager Sharon Smith. Director Potter and his team did an outstanding job. They got services back online. They worked with council to find the vehicles necessary to deliver services and manage this crisis. That was just 3.5 years ago, and that's just outstanding. On September 1st, I began to work for Metro and start to work on this process of establishing a standalone department. And over the last 8 months, I've worked to assess the operation from the perspective of the solid waste industry. So waste services and the work of our employees that they do every day play a vital role in this community. They're the frontline face of government, reaching over 1 million touch points every month, from trash and recycling carts to dumpster services. Safety is paramount to the work of our employees that they do every day. And to do this work, they need uniforms that are compliant with ANSI standards and reflective pants, vests, gloves, goggles, hard hats, steel-toed boots. And we are increasing their uniform allowance with this budget from $475 to $600 per person. We're also offering greater access to these items. Within the next couple of months, an employee will soon be able to walk up to a vending machine, swipe their badge, and easily select a pair of gloves, goggles, or whatever safety equipment they need. Hearing protection is also important, and we're working to establish audiograms for hearing testing. Even cleaning vehicles on a regular basis, reducing exposure to toxins that are built up from garbage juice is important to our employees. This budget includes regular cleaning of vehicles to reduce exposure. Proper safety training, 3 touch point holds, and not riding on the back of a truck when the vehicle's backing up. This is all part of managing and supporting our employees within waste services. We also looked at the tools to effectively communicate and route vehicles. When I first arrived, there was no way to communicate with our drivers while they were out on routes and delivering services to the community. Conversely, there was no way for drivers to reach a supervisor or dispatcher when they needed assistance, their vehicle was broken down, or they were involved in an incident. To address this safety matter, we began the process of adding radios so our drivers could reach someone in the event of an emergency. This budget supports increased communications with drivers while they're out servicing routes. As with any operation, this review included looking at staffing levels to ensure the delivery of quality services, resources, and tools to perform this work, fleet size and spare ratios, and facilities to support this work. We're focused on this work, and we're working with our employees, supporting them and providing them with tools to be successful for the important service they provide to our community. So to lay a foundation and build a department, you must have a team. And the Waste Services leadership team includes the addition of Assistant Director Eugene McKinney. He's back with us over there. And he brings 30 years of experience in the solid waste industry, starting his career on the back of a truck and rising to being a leader in this industry. It's HR manager Patricia Reed. I think she's in the back there. She has over 30 years experience in human resources and the bonus of being an engineer. And finance manager Jesse Dillard, who has served as a leader in finance for another Tennessee city. Safety coordinator Jessica Westbrook, who has several years of experience in this role. And she's back there with us. And IT manager Eddie Dean, who has over 10 years in automating and bringing waste management systems online, including routing solid waste industry fleets. And public information manager Dave Foster, who just started this week with us, he joins Waste Services with many years in local news media, and he will help improve communications, both internal and external communications, sharing the Waste Services story. That's combined with the leadership of the department's special projects manager, Sharon Smith, who has been a leader and an advocate for Nashville's sustainable future for many years. I'm happy to have her on that team. And Jen Harmon, who's going to continue to assist us in recycling and education efforts. She's such an advocate for this industry. And Clay Hand, who's in the back there, he keeps us straight with the landfill compliance for the department. The Waste Services team is here to help, and we're all focused on building the department with a focus on service and Nashville's sustainable future. So to build a department, you have to know where you are, where you're going, and how you're going to get there. Change is not easy, and it doesn't happen overnight. Services were stabilized, but the system is broken and not efficient. The city collection routes have not been optimized or balanced in over 7 years. Most cities optimize and balance routes to account for infill and development twice a year. When the bankrupt contractor stopped providing services, a route or street was parceled out, one street at a time. As a result, contracted routes are still scattered across the city, and there are some streets that are even serviced by both Metro and multiple contractors. There's been a lot of changes in our neighborhoods in the last 7 years. Combined with Nashville adding 100 people a day, you can only imagine how that impacts the delivery of services. Metro drivers have also been doing this with paper maps. We must do the work to fix the system and automate the routes to assist drivers so they can work more efficiently and move to a more reliable standard in the delivery of services. This budget focuses on employee health and safety, providing resources, training and development, creating a deeper bench so there's more accountability in services, while also providing opportunities for employees to have upward mobility. It's about establishing a framework to succeed, moving from a position of reacting to the next crisis to being proactive to providing the services that everyone expects and deserves. The new Department of Waste Services sets the foundation for a modern, accountable, community-focused waste management operation. This allows Metro to achieve service continuity during transition, expand in-house collection services, increase operational efficiencies, and begin to foster a high-performance public service culture. Our mission: the Metro Department of Waste Services is committed to the delivery of safe, efficient waste management and recycling programs and services in an environmentally and economically responsible manner. We're effectively managing the city's waste streams, fostering environmental stewardship, and increasing landfill diversion opportunities by recycling, composting, and reusing materials. Those are essential to Nashville's sustainable future. The department is responsible for weekly curbside collection and trash collection, and every other week curbside recycling services. Business and waste recycling services with 164 businesses in the downtown corridor. 4 convenience centers: Anderson Lane, East, Ezell, Pike, and Alejandro. Davidson County residents can bring their waste, recycling, bulky items, food waste, electronic waste, household hazardous waste, and other items for recycling and disposal to these centers. There's also 7 recycling drop-off locations: Bellevue, Granbury, Hillsborough, Jolton Middle School, Lakewood City Hall, McGavick High School, Whites Creek High School. We're also responsible for landfill permit and compliance and monitoring for 5 closed landfills. As I said earlier, Clay Hand heads those efforts up for us. Recycling, education, and outreach, including zero waste initiatives. And we're also tasked with the responsibility for construction and demolition debris diversion. So what are our budget pressures and constraints? That would be labor, fleet, and infrastructure. The current operation is significantly under-resourced. From a logistics standpoint, there should be more field supervision to provide route management and oversight. The field presence provides stability, accountability, and supports drivers servicing their routes, assisting with spills and accident coverage, as well as sweeping these areas at the end of shift to confirm that service has occurred. These layers of management also support reporting responsibilities, route coverage, and following up with residents and businesses on any calls received in the hub. This budget funds those positions to increase accountability in the delivery of services. With regard to fleet, there must be a timely turnaround on basic repairs and preventive maintenance to ensure that drivers have the proper tools and equipment to perform their jobs. This budget includes an on-site mechanic to do minor repairs and maintenance for fleet support. We also at Waste Services do not have any ownership or control over processing and the transfer station facilities. We're relying on contracted services for processing recyclables as well as hauling and disposable trash. We're focused on contract compliance and how we can move forward with RFPs in the future to address some of these things in a competitive environment. As far as employees, our authorized strength right now is 121 employees. That includes 51 equipment operator seniors. There are 5 vacancies, and there's 17 sanitation workers. There's 2 vacancies there, and we're actively recruiting those every day. The budget also includes 30 positions. That's 17 positions in collections. That's putting the majority of the positions on the front line. That includes equipment operators, adding 10 equipment operator seniors for collection services. Another layer of management that is overseeing those field supervisors, which is program managers. There's compliance inspectors to be able to make sure that containers are set out properly and that there's no contamination in our waste stream. And it also includes the equipment mechanic. This adds more accountability to the front line, supports delivery of services by creating those layers for accountability and fleet support too. The budget also includes convenience centers with having an on-site supervisor at our convenience centers. We kind of view those as independent businesses, and so that support is pretty essential to that operation. There's also the need to have additional folks as an independent department, the standalone department. We've got to have resources in human resources and in safety personnel. So this budget includes another safety coordinator, 1 human resource analyst, and 3 human resource analyst seniors. That allows for us to have employee relations, onboarding, and recruiting efforts, and supports all those functions. For financial and technology services, there are 5 positions in this budget. That's an assistant director to oversee the finance piece with 2 finance officers and 2 information system application tech 2s. Those tech 2s will be actually out in the field, going to the trucks, supporting our drivers as they use this new technology. So it's making sure that the technology's up and we have confirmation of service. So this is a good start in providing the necessary structure and the support for a standalone department and the first phase of a multi-year staffing effort. With regard to our budget, our operating budget is a little over $59 million this year. That is a $3.6 million increase or 7% since over the 2025 budget. Since fiscal year 23, there's been a 36% increase in the budget for waste services, being under the umbrella of other departments. And I want to thank you for your work in making these investments and making that possible because you're supporting the delivery of services to all the residents in Davidson County. That's huge. Everybody wants the water. They want their waste to be picked up. Then from a revenue standpoint, the 2026 revenue projection is at $59 million. And from an expenditure per capita, that ends up being $80.08 per capita. When you break down the budget, a huge portion of our budget, our operating budget, goes to support those contractual agreements that we have in place for trash collection services. So this year, the contractual increase is a $3 million increase, 5% for the CPI, taking that into account. So the total cost of all those contracts involved in trash collection is $23.5 million. On a weekly basis, over 144,824 households receive weekly curbside trash collection. Metro's actually stepped into this, and when we insourced the platform routes in November and started down that path, and that was a savings of $4.5 million. So we're now servicing over 38,000 households in that. So when you want to break down who is servicing what in terms of trash, 48% is being serviced right now by Waste Management. Waste Pro is servicing 25%, and Metro is servicing 27%. With regard to a weekly or biweekly collection of recycling, our recycling set-out rate is 42%. The set-out rate is the rate at which people are sticking their carts out for service, and we're working to increase that rate through the help of the Waste Services Recycling and Education team. That's the team that Jen Harmon leads, and they're actively involved in covering events and getting out there trying to do the education with our residents to make them aware of what is recyclable and how we can increase that number. The contamination rate is 21%, which is on par with the industry. The worst offender of contamination in the recycling stream are plastic bags, batteries, and garden hoses right about now. So last year, we were able to divert 26,100 tons from the landfill. And that's through curbside recycling and convenience center services. So every week, Metro Waste Services provides curbside trash and recycling services to over 151,000 residents, with 30 to 32 routes being run each day. The city's service rate is over 99%. The budget also includes contracts for processing of our recyclables. That's a $1 million contract at a processing fee of $121.02 per ton. There's also our transfer station agreement, which is our disposal agreement. That's a $7 million contract. That's now going to a rate of $47.25 per ton. So it's a $175,000 increase over the previous year due to the 2.5% CPI. Metro landfilled 164,291 tons last year. That number's been trending down, so we're doing something, in this, and then that's good. Our recycling efforts are kicking up, and so we are diminishing what we are sending to the landfill as far as Metro goes. The current disposal contract ends in June 2027. So we're going to be looking at that as soon as we get past budget, looking at how we can kind of go at this from a creative bid process so that we can see that what we can do with that rate. So there's some additional highlights I want to point out. The food composting pilot program shows great promise. Food is one of the most common things in the waste stream. And so this past year, we've diverted over 143,100 pounds of food from the landfill. It's a pilot program right now, 750 participants with an 84% set-out rate. That's something we're going to be looking at how we can expand that, educate folks on that, because that's something you can do just within your backyard and make a big difference in what you're sending to the landfill. We're also able to provide services to over 153,770 residents who have been at each one of our convenience centers over the last year. And we are improving our vacancy rate from 18% to 8%, and we're actively recruiting staff to fill those vacancies and build this department. And as I said earlier, we insourced routes and providing services to 38,000 homes, saving $4.5 million just this year. I want to thank you for your leadership and commitment to setting up this department. It's a big deal. We appreciate your investment in ensuring that our employees have the necessary tools and resources to do this work in a safe and efficient manner. And I look forward to continuing to work with you and serving the residents of Nashville and Davidson County.
Thank you so much. First, I have Chair Parker. You're recognized.
Chair, if you could come back to me after other questions, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. Next, I'll go to Councilmember Toombs. Did you have something? Councilmember Gamble, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair, for coming back to me, and thank you, Director Thurman, for your presentation. And you kind of touched on what I was going to ask about, so thank you again. The compliance inspectors, you mentioned that you are looking at increasing your full-time staff, adding compliance inspectors. One thing that I have noticed or issue in my district, and it's not a big issue, but there are some issues with residents not moving their containers after trash day. They leave them out all week, every day, all day. And I know you all send out the letters when we first get our trash cans advising people about the process or not leaving their trash cans out. But with this compliance inspectors, will you have inspectors that will, cite or leave notices for residents that leave their trash cans out? I did reach out to codes about that because I had a habitual issue on two streets in my district and wanted someone to go out and kind of either cite or put a notice, and was told that that was going under water services. So wondered if these compliance inspectors will be addressing that, or if that function will be included in that role.
That's exactly the function. Compliance is so much a part of the waste industry, and so I think we want to work with our residents and educate them. It's not meant to be impunitive on the first end. We want to be good neighbors, and and I think the important thing is having that presence in the community. And so the current budget didn't allow for that. So we've got those picked up in this budget. So that's a great thing to fund that. Because I know that'll be somebody that'll get out there and work with residents, educate them on what some of the policies are, and kind of address that issue where it might not become a blight issue.
Great. Thank you so much. That's all I have, Chair.
Thank you so very much, Councilmember Campbell. Councilmember Johnston, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'm trying to figure out how to limit my questions to just two when we've got a brand new department we're trying to stand up. So we're spending quite a bit of money on technology, and which I don't disagree with, especially routing software, because I know we have issues with that, and those need to be continually updated. I do think that we've done some duplication between Zonar and Verizon Connect, but we're talking, $116,000 I think we've spent on Verizon Connect that I think is going to be completely replaced with Zonar, correct?
So I think you're referencing telematics. So that's a program that actually is under water services. And so we're actually installing routeware for our waste fleet. It's considered the gold standard for the solid waste industry. So right now with telematics, it's essentially a GPS type system. Routeware allows us to actually have an actuator on the arm and actually confirm services occurred. It creates a dashboard and allows our supervisors to track routes in real time.
I understand what it is. So are you saying that, so water services is using Verizon Connect and then waste services is going to use Zonar because they're both telematics?
So telematics is the actual software name that water has. So it's a transition. We're transitioning away from that and moving to routeware because routeware is considered a solid waste industry gold standard.
So then what is Zonar?
Zonar is actually a puck and wand system we're putting on there for electronic capture of our DOT inspections that are required by federal law. And so instead of chasing paper, that's the only option outside of Zonar, the driver will go around to pre-positioned dots on the vehicle, and they'll inspect the vehicle. And so that provides us an electronic record of that inspection. It's captured into dispatch, and then dispatch confirms that they've done it and that they've done it complete. If there is an issue with the truck, it will communicate it to fleet services.
Okay.
So it's connecting the dots.
Okay. So previously we had you mentioned 83% of our routes were done by contractors. What percentage, because recycle is handled all by Metro employees, correct? Recycle pickup.
Correct.
So it's just regular waste pickup that we do have contractors. We went from 83%. What is it? What's the percentage now?
So I referenced earlier, it's 48% for waste management. We're holding 27% of that now when we took the platform route. So Metro's providing 27% of the services for trash now. And then also it includes 25% for, Waste Pro.
So what's the total amount, what's the total percentage that contractors handle?
It's 73%, yeah.
So we're down 10%.
Correct.
Okay. But we're moving towards getting that to be a better percentage, right? I mean, I think we should, wasn't that your goal when we had our meeting was to increasingly take over some of those contracted routes? I don't think it's wise to completely take that over because I do think it's a good safety net if something happens with our people or our equipment. It's nice to have something there. So I think we had talked about a policy where a certain percentage would be prohibited, and I think that we need to continue there. I am wondering, this fleet rental equipment contracted services is a reduction of $1.82 million, and I'm wondering where that number came from, because if we're talking about the Cumberland Capital lease, that's $4.368 million a year. So, can you expand on that? The difference between the 1.82 reduction and the value of the contract, because we're spending $364,000 a month for 14 trucks, and 3 of them I think we're using.
Actually, we're in negotiations right now with legal services handling that. So they're creating an exit strategy out of that. And so we're in negotiations for that. That number would have been to provide service toward the end of the year.
To the end of the fiscal year or the end of the calendar year? So I know that we are not able to return those trucks that we're wanting to return because of the condition that they're in, and the vendor is not willing to take those. So what is the timeline, while we're spending $364,000 a month on the rental, what is the timeline of getting those trucks in a position to be able to be returned from a maintenance and refurbishing perspective?
So just as I've said, we are in the middle of legal negotiations with that. Part of that is that we've actually been in the process of repairing those units. And at this point, I think all but maybe 3 are repaired. There's also been a date set where there's the gentleman's attorney's coming over to do inspections with his person of those units, and that's supposed to occur tomorrow.
Yes, I knew that was going to occur tomorrow, but he wasn't told how many units he was able to inspect. So how many units is he able to inspect?
Should be 11 tomorrow.
And are you still purchasing the 4 pup trucks?
We're waiting to see what legal comes up with in terms of those things. It may be more, it may be less. We're waiting on those legal negotiations for that.
Okay.
Councilmember Johnston,
Yes.
I will come back to you if time permits, because I allow a lot more than 2.
Thank you. You're right. Thank you.
Councilmember Bradford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate you being here. Anybody who's listened to you talk about what you've done in your past, what you want to do here in Nashville, can't help but walk away feeling like they can, charge into hell with a water pistol. It's a very rejuvenating conversation. The 2 questions I've got, you touched on manned convenience centers. Not all of our convenience centers in Davidson County are manned. When we had our conversation, that's one thing I brought up is we need to have more manned facilities to help cut down on some of the contamination. Like I know when I go to the McGavick facility, every time I go, at least 1 or 2 of the dumpsters have some kind of contaminant in it, whether it's shredded paper in a plastic bag in the paper bin or just whatever. How soon can we start talking about expanding the number of manned convenience centers? The second question I've got, with the addition or with the transfer of fire services from the USD to the GSD, where we saw the GSD prices go up, and eventually we're going to get to a point that I believe we should be at, is having one countywide rate for property taxes. My question on that is, as we are starting to see the difference between USD and GSD get smaller and smaller, more and more people are going to be asking the question, those that live in the GSD, if we're paying almost the exact same amount as others, why are we not getting the services that they're getting? So I'm asking that more or less to kind of put it on your radar that we're getting to a point now where there's really no difference between people who live in the GSD like myself and those who live in the USD. And, we're paying for private trash. We don't get recycling. We don't get composting. But we're starting to see we're almost paying the same amount as people in another district. So not so much expecting an answer, but if you want to answer that, go right ahead. But I just want to put that on your radar that we need to start having a plan for how we're going to address and expand services countywide.
So those are great points and great question. So what I will tell you is that I've had the same questions because, again, when you look at growth and development in our community, where is it going? Are our current convenience centers effectively servicing the people that they need to reach and providing that equity and that the access to those services? So as part of that, we've started down this path of doing a study of all of our convenience centers. So I have Barge and Wilmot Services actually doing a study and doing an evaluation of those convenience centers. We're trying to see, are they user-friendly? We've done secret shopper with those. We're trying to see what materials that we're actually processing in each of those, because we want those to look, they need a facelift. They need to be more user-friendly and accessible to everybody. We're also looking at, does it make sense that we have a household hazardous waste here, e-waste here? How can we improve that? So I'm awaiting the results of that. I also think it helps to inform, because I asked them for locations, when they're looking at that, what are other places that we might be able to locate these kinds of services and reach more people? And then as an aside to that, one of the things from an outreach standpoint and offering people access to services is at some point we will be looking at hosting events there that will be like a free drop-off day, where there's a household hazardous waste or an electronic waste. So it's a free service day to offer additional services so that people feel like they're getting the most bang for their taxpayer dollar. I mean, that's pretty important. For the long term, we also have Raftelysis on contract. And so, we haven't kind of gotten down that path yet, but that's something that definitely is on the horizon and part of strategic planning for the future. So I appreciate you putting that on our radar, and it's definitely important.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all.
Thank you so very much. Chair Parker, did you have something? You're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to touch on two things. These technological improvements for the routing and the where we get feedback about whether a can was serviced. I'm very excited about that, but I think that we need something that's providing feedback, as Chair Gamble was hinting at, about cans being left out, but also something that provides feedback when service is refused for a good reason. Like if someone has contaminants or they've got building materials sticking up from the can. And, when I get a report of a missed collection, I ask people for photos of it, and sometimes they'll send it to me and often they won't. So I'll go out there and look. And it usually is a genuine missed can, but occasionally I can email them and say, look, you have XYZ, and they're never going to take this. You have to address the contamination before they're ever going to do it. And if we could give like a tag ticket or something, I know that slows the guys down, that slows our people down when they're in the field, but getting that feedback, I think, would be really helpful to the customer when service is being refused. And so that's not a question, that's just some feedback. And another point, I want to thank y'all for the attention to the convenience centers. I really pushed to get one additional FTE at the convenience centers like 4 years ago, and they are running very smoothly. I actually ran into Ms. Sharon Smith out at the Trinity Convenience Center a few weeks ago, checking things out. And as you look at policies around that, and I think I've shared this with you before, but I wanted to state it publicly, I think it's very important that we maintain the static hazardous waste collection sites because of, and I believe if that's all you've got, it's no fee, correct? Because we want that stuff where we can deal with it. We don't want it leaching into the ground. We don't want it being disposed of improperly, poured down the drain, down the storm drain, any of that kind of stuff. Folks know they can bring it to us, brake fluid, old gasoline, whatever. We'll get it where it needs to go. But I love the idea of having these pop-up events around the county as well. But like overall with the fees, and as we're kind of professional, they were professional before, but as we're the convenience centers are becoming more particular, which is good, right? We want to be charging a reasonable rate, but we also have to strike the balance of like them being convenient and affordable for people, because there's a point where that person doesn't like the price and it ends up in the alley, right? And we don't want it so low that people are taking advantage of it, commercial haulers and whatnot. So I know that you guys are thinking about that, but I just thinking about the whole picture of like what happens, what expenses other departments incur to go clean up that alley after the guy didn't want to pay $75, and just thinking about the whole picture when we set rates and accessibility at these centers. But I actually, believe it or not, do not have any specific questions for you today. But I do appreciate you being here. I just wanted to provide that feedback. Thank you.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate your all support because the compliance piece is really critical, and you all have provided support in this budget for that. So there will be somebody that can put the oops sticker on there and kind of follow back up and kind of work with the resident to get them, to understand what it is they did in prepping their waste and getting it put away. So I think that's part of that.
So the compliance officer would be if the software system says this can was checked but not collected, that would be a person who would drive to that location and issue some kind of notice to the resident.
Actually, they would be boots on the ground working in each of those neighborhoods. That's, putting them out there in the field. So they'll be kind of wandering around doing that. It also allows for, it doesn't remove the driver from that process either. So, again, the driver can make notes in RouteWare. So it's going to make notes when there's contamination. And so they should have put the oops sticker out. So it'll just be a whole coordinated effort between compliance and that. And there just hasn't been that piece or the manpower to do it.
I'm very excited to have that piece in place. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. And Councilmember Johnston, I will go, Councilmember Johnston's not here. All right, Ms. Director Potter, I believe you said you had one thing you want to follow up on.
Yeah, Councilmember, I do have the numbers about biosolids, Councilman Bradford. It's total revenue is 4.8 million, and the total saved in landfill costs is 10.6 million.
Thank you so very much. And we are going to conclude for the evening. Thank you all so much for keeping our drinking water safe and keeping our streets clean by making sure the trash is picked up quickly, effectively, and efficiently. Thank you all so much. And our meeting today is adjourned.